Welcome to this flight of the Retail Pilot. I'm Ken Pilot, former CEO and current brand advisor, investor, and board member. I'm thrilled to share with you some of the insights from retail's leaders and legends, as well as my perspective on retail today. This podcast is sponsored by the following. Want to drive more traffic and conversions on your e-commerce site? Brands that use video see 41% more traffic from search engines. And that's just the start. Meet Firework, the leader in AI-powered video commerce. Trusted by brands like L'Oreal and Unilever, Firework turns any page into an immersive, shoppable experience. From pre-recorded long-form content to short-form and everything in between. With Firework, you can easily integrate social media videos into your product pages and run pre-recorded digital showrooms with shoppable content. Plus, Firework offers AI-powered virtual assistants to personalize shopper experience and drive higher conversion. That's why I'm an investor and advisor. Learn more at firework.com. On today's flight of the Retail Pilot, my guest is David Lafitte, CEO of Tecovas, the innovative Austin-based Western footwear and apparel brand. Lafitte joined Tecovas in mid-2022 after an accomplished tenure as Chief Operating Officer at Deckers Brands, where he played a pivotal role overseeing operations for a $3 billion portfolio, including UGG and Hoka. Lafitte's earlier career was rooted in corporate law, followed by executive leadership roles in footwear sector. At Tecovas, he is focused on channeling the brand's rapid growth, achieving well over $200 million in annual sales, and expanding its brick-and-mortar footprint and wholesale partnerships. Under his guidance, Tecovas has reinforced its position as a leader in Western lifestyle products, emphasizing high-quality craftsmanship and immersive retail experiences. Lafitte is a graduate of the University of Colorado and Tulane University Law School and is recognized for strategic leadership in high-growth consumer brands. David, welcome to the podcast.
Great. Thank you, Ken. Thanks for having me.
It's good to see you again. And since we spoke last, I, of course, got a chance to hop down to what was your 50th store opening, which was in Manhattan, a flagship store in Soho, where I had an amazing experience with your store manager, Nick, who took me through pretty much everything you could imagine and then some. But I really loved the branding of the store, the feel of the store, the vibe. You guys did a great job.
Yeah, thank you. We're very excited about the Soho store. And it's, I think it's really, needless to say, kind of the pinnacle expression, retail in general, of the Tecovas brand. So we're excited about the Soho store. And we go into these not as, quote, marketing plays. We go in to truly operate a profitable business in each box. And I think we'll do that in New York as well.
We'll talk more about stores and growth. But first, tell us a little bit more about how, based on your background and coming out of this from a law point of view, you ended up in the Western lifestyle market.
Yeah, no, it's an interesting journey. As you mentioned at the outset, I was a practicing corporate attorney for about 25 years, and Deckers was one of my legal clients, and I was kind of serving as their outside general counsel. And at the time, back in 2014 or so, they had been looking for a chief operating officer for maybe a year. And at one of the board meetings, the then chairman and CEO, Angel Martinez, said, "Can you have lunch on Monday?" I said, "Sure." And so he said, I think you should take this position as chief operating officer. And I was like, well, I don't know anything about operations or footwear, but other than that, it sounds like a perfect fit to me. So anyway, he wasn't kidding. And so I went back and spoke to my wife. And over the next month, I think I handed off a fairly sizable book of business to all my law partners and resigned from my law firm, which I was kind of serving as co-managing partner, and dove into Deckers at that time. So that was 2015. And that was quite a journey and a lot of learnings and things, a new career for me. So I certainly learned a lot along the way.
And you work with my good friend, Dave Powers, who took the helm somewhere, maybe just after that.
But shortly thereafter, yeah. It was kind of a turnaround a little bit at the time. And I kind of wanted to make sure that people knew that, this is going to take probably a good 5 years to get this back on track. And anyhow, a lot of changes occurred. But Dave, took the helm and became a very great partner for me. allowed me to go do what I needed to do. The mandate was pretty clear. Operating margins at Deckers had gone from roughly 20% down to 9.5%. So the mandate was pretty clear. We had to go find some improved gross margins and just get the business more profitable. And so everyone kind of had a clear direction, but we went through activist campaigns and all kind of stuff. So it was a fun journey for sure.
So Dave focused on the product and you really focused on everything from stores, supply chain, any operational piece of the business.
Correct. All the shared services for every brand. So my kind of launch was everything from product development to sourcing and production, distribution, logistics, innovation, demand planning, supply planning, really that backbone for kind of everything that the brands would have to do. I didn't really do much on the front end. So even retail operations was more kind of in the Cord Omni group. So it was truly more supply chain, IT, product development, those sorts of areas.
How over that period of time do you develop an affinity for product and brands and merchandising and marketing, which was not your remit?
No, frankly, didn't come until I started Tecovas, to be honest. I mean, I think the reason Angel sort of thought I might be a good fit for that position is, I can roll my sleeves up, ask questions, dig in. I think the biggest thing, though, is being able to work cross-functionally, knowing that it's kind of nice to come in without a playbook sometimes, meaning what I know I have to do is surround myself with the best people, empower them to get their jobs done, clear the obstacles. So I think a lot of that is just the leadership part of it and less about, oh, this guy really knows our merchandising strategy. He can really flip the switch here. And similarly, when I moved over to Tecovas, that's not necessarily what they were looking for. Now, you have to have that. And so if I don't have it, I better hire the people that absolutely are fantastic at it. And I think if I'm going to get an A+ at Tecovas in my 3 years here, I think it would be assembling an A+ team. It would certainly be at the top of my grades list.
David, share with us, for those who aren't as familiar with the Tecovas brand, high level, who Tecovas is, stores you're operating in, a little bit more context around the space that you're in.
Sure. So Tecovas started back in 2015. So we're actually on our 10th anniversary this year. And Paul Hedrick, the founder, saw an opportunity in a market that was, on the one hand, a few well-known brands that had limited to no direct consumer presence and selling into a very fragmented wholesale marketplace that had a couple of large distributors, Boot Barn, Cavenders, but then it was a highly fragmented kind of mom and pop independent stores that have been around a long time, servicing a terrific consumer. So Paul kind of saw this opportunity to take a brand-led approach into a direct consumer market. And at the time, kind of became known and frankly started around a lot of these digitally native companies, became a little bit known as the Warby Parker of cowboy boots, cutting out the middleman, going direct to the consumer. I think over the past few years, and Paul kind of started this really before I came on board, really moving more to an omni approach. Paul started to open retail in 2019 and really saw the need to kind of, number one, as we talked about early on, just the pinnacle expression of this brand and what it can be was a big part of it, but also just in an omni approach, meeting the consumer where they are. And I think a lot of times when you cut out the middleman, sometimes you realize you become the middleman. And sometimes that can be very expensive and costly. So we've tried to kind of take the brand and position it as a true premium lifestyle brand and really focused on two key things. One is putting out incredible crafted quality product with some product pillars that are timeless style and out of the box comfort. And then coupling that with what we call this radical hospitality that we try and bring into each of our channels, but in particular, it kind of showcases in our retail presence. Migration.
Definitely felt the radical hospitality from your team.
Great.
Manhattan, you're trying a pair of boots, you can grab a cocktail or you can chat with the people there, but with a really good job and a store well designed. How long did it take you to open that store?
From the time we had been looking in Soho for quite a while, we spent a lot of time on just looking at our data on real estate, where we think, as I said, not just to open an incredibly expensive, the lease cost had to be kind of right for us. So I would say, kind of looking for the area might have been 6 months, and then, probably another 6 months to sign and move on with our tenant improvements and getting the store how we wanted it. The nice thing about the store, it's got a very cool presence already. The exposed brick, the flooring was beautiful, very Soho kind of environment. So we wanted to keep a lot of that look and feel of that local market, and then kind of bring the Austin Western spot to it as well. And I think we kind of married those two pretty well with that store.
Share with us a little bit more about Radical Hospitality. Just go into what that looks like and how perhaps that's a differentiator for you in stores than from others.
Yeah. So I think I'm going to start just kind of at a little bit of a high level and give you one example. The other day, we just opened the Detroit store the other day. And for whatever reason, we had to push out an opening from October 3rd to October 10. And a lot of times we'll have people come to our store opening and get in line in the morning, and they'll get a goodie bag of a few things, et cetera. But it's kind of exciting for them. And unfortunately, there was a couple who drove in from across the border from Canada on the wrong day. And so needless to say, they hadn't gotten the memo that we had pushed it out a week. So they were very disappointed. They had a babysitter lined up and had made this trek into the Detroit area. So we said, okay, well, let's make sure we ship, some stuff, the goodie bags, et cetera. And we realized they were in Canada and not easy for us to ship to Canada right now. So our two retail folks jumped in a car with their passports and personally delivered the bags to their houses. And that's just sort of to show, and these women were kind of overwhelmed and very appreciative. But I think it's an example that when we mean radical hospitality, this comes from the top down. It's not just a gesture. It is sort of something that we talk about constantly in the company. So to bring that forward a little bit on what it means in a retail store, for example, you've mentioned that we do have a bar in every store serving alcoholic, non-alcoholic beverages. Complimentary, we're not selling them. We have shoe shine booths in every store. We've got a custom area where we can do branding and personalization and customization, whether it's branding on a leather good or chain stitching on a shirt or a hat. And all of these are complimentary services. Last year, for example, 2024, I think we served over 250,000 drinks, and 25% of the transactions in the store had some form of personalization. Then I think the other big part of it, which you touched on as well with Nick and the team in our Soho store, we spend a lot of time and investment and money attracting and retaining our key retail team members. They are the lifeblood of this company. They go through a lot of training. They're incredibly knowledgeable about the product. And we want it to be approachable. A lot of people are coming into Western, maybe buying boots for the first time. If you walk into a 15,000 square foot store with just boots all over the wall and not a lot of point of sale service, it can be a little bit overwhelming. So we try and make it fun for people. We don't pressure them. If you want to come and have a drink or a beer and learn a little bit, you may not be ready. Try a few things on, and who knows, maybe in a month you come back and you're ready to jump off that cliff and put on a pair of boots. But then one last thing, and I'll stop rambling for a second. I do think that this out-of-the-box comfort, incredibly important for our product. And similar to Deckers and the way in which Hoka got the Hoka brand going and working with a lot of specialty retailers, incredibly important to get people in those stores and put the product on their feet so they can truly feel the difference. And in Hoka, these weren't shoes that were going to jump off the shelf because they were so good looking. They were very arresting to the eye, if you will. But once you put those shoes on and walk around, you kind of could feel the difference. Similarly, with our boots, we want to get boots on people's feet. So whether it's in our own store or now partnering with some of our key wholesale independent stores, which we can get into in a little bit, getting that product on their feet has been critical. So anyway, I'll pause there.
Well, you're doing a great job because all of what you described cut through for me while I was in the store. So let's talk a little bit more about growth and expansion. You're up to 54 stores by the end of the year. I think you mentioned you'll be very close to 300 million in revenue, top line revenue.
Yeah,
which is a strong number. When you look out going forward, you have product growth, you have we'll call it vertical growth, whether it's wholesale, retail, online. Talk to me a little bit more about, on the product side, what the plan, the vision is for the company over the next 12, 18 months in terms of getting the growth, the category growth.
Yeah, great question. So on the product side, we do think we've got a long runway on what we call the bread and butter product being kind of what we call best of breed boots, our cowboy boots, ropers, very Western traditional product. We want to be a footwear led brand. We think that's important. We also think it's important to be a lifestyle brand, as I mentioned a second ago, being premium lifestyle, meaning when I say that, kind of head to toe, I think a couple of key areas that we're focused on would be denim and jeans, especially for men. It's a cut that you can well wear with boots that don't have this radar where the shaft of the boot's kind of pushing through the denim. At the same time, it's a cut that if you're wearing loafers, it's not going to look absurd either. So we think it's kind of a unique cut. And again, like our footwear product, we want to make sure it's kind of that timeless style, out of the box comfort. So jeans and denim, very important. Men's shirting, another very important area. Pearl snaps, similar to what I'm wearing. Some performance shirts. So those are key areas. On the footwear side, we have a few products that we kind of call Western adjacent, and we want to make sure it's kind of got the Tecovas DNA of just very high-end materials, like craftsmanship. But a loafer, like a product called the Monterey, does over 8 million a year. And it's just a very comfortable slip-on loafer. I was at a wedding actually in the Palm Springs area earlier this year and must have seen 5 people on the West Coast wearing the Monterey at a wedding. So, it's getting a lot of people who aren't yet ready maybe for a cowboy boot can still enjoy the brand through that type of a product. Women's incredibly important for us as well. When I started, I think the women's business was probably doing 20% of footwear. It's now up to about 40%. So very high growth in women's. And I can get into a bunch more there. But so on the product side, and then we also, the last kind of piece, we did launch Work in December of 2024. And there we're kind of focused again a little bit on the premium side of things. So our price point might be a little bit more on the high end, but a product that's incredibly comfortable, durable, also timeless style. You can go from your work environment to dinner that night and feel, kind of at home as well.
All the product in your store, this is all Tecova brand, right? There's no, or very little third-party product, if any, in the store today.
That's correct. We do a few kind of third-party collaborations on some jewelry and fragrance and candles, things like that. But for the most part, it's Tecovas branded product in our stores.
And that would be, I guess, one of the big differentiators between you and a Boot Barn who carries a lot of third-party product. They're more of a retailer of brands than a retailer of their own brand.
That's correct. Yes. And a big one. And Boot Barn, we love seeing their success. We truly believe sort of a rising tide mentality of floating all boats. And they've done a tremendous job, not only with their business, but also educating Wall Street, in my view, about, how big this opportunity really can be and is.
With that, let's just take a quick sponsor break. Looking for a 3PL that's truly next level? Cart.com is a 3PL on steroids with nationwide distribution centers and the most advanced AI-driven software solutions from WMS and OMS to TMS, all designed to streamline your entire delivery process. With Cart.com, you get a fully integrated commerce platform that unifies your operations, data, and customer experience all in one place. Their platform combines physical distribution with cutting-edge AI, empowering retailers to scale faster and more efficiently. Whether you're D2C, B2B, or omni-channel, Cart.com connects your tech stack, simplifies your logistics, and powers your growth. From click to customer, enabling distribution for Janie and Jack, Portland Leather Goods, Tom's, and many more. Cart.com. Today's podcast is also brought to you by Simulate. Search has changed. Today's shoppers don't type keywords, they ask questions, full sentences, 35 words on average. Legacy search engines can't keep up, but Simulate can. Simulate's the first AI-native commerce platform powered by Commerce GPT. built to understand intent, not just match words. That means smarter results, fewer dead ends, and higher conversions automatically. Visit Simulate AI, that's with a C, Simulate with a C, to see how context-aware AI is reshaping commerce in-store and online. David is sharing with us a 20% discount on your next purchase of Tecovas, and the promo code is PILOT20. We're back. David, let's talk some more about competition and the cowboy trend, because I don't know if it goes back to Yellowstone or where this began, but it still seems incredibly strong. Who would you say are just some of the competitors? You mentioned Boot Barn, but if I'm out in the market looking for boots, if I'm not buying a Tecovas boot, whose boot would I be buying?
Well, some of the competitors would be Ariat, Lucchese, Justin Boots, Anderson Bean. There's quite a few competition. And, I think that you can kind of trace back. I mean, Taylor Sheridan, I think, has just done an incredible job of storytelling. I do think the Yellowstone shows, he was getting 13 million viewers on each episode. And so I think that this iconic silhouette has been around, obviously, for 150 years. I think if you look at some underlying foundational things like country music, I mean, just the fastest growing genre out there, the streams doubled over the past few years. You see Morgan Wallen selling out stadiums, Levi Stadium 2 nights in a row, Foxborough and outside of Boston. Zach Bryan just sold out Ann Arbor, Michigan Stadium, sold out Notre Dame Stadium. And then, of course, you've got Cowboy Carter and Beyonce, et cetera. I do think I would say that is a little bit more on the trend side. And I just think we're seeing this cultural zeitgeist. And I think that Tecovas is, truly in the bullseye of it. So we celebrate the tailwinds, knowing that we've got to, though, build a brand over a long term and be very sustainable and durable. And I think we want to grow and continue to kind of bring Western to a broader group, but we have to do it in a very authentic way. And I think the kind of filter I want to use is making sure that the people who have been in Western it's their lifestyle. They're not wearing boots once a month or a week. They're wearing them 7 days a week. I want to make sure that they view us and will be proud of the way in which we're bringing forward this Western heritage, that they would look at it and say, okay, that's a very cool way to do this, as opposed to, wow, this group looks like a bunch of drugstore cowboys here. That's not what we want to be viewed as at all.
You did an exciting job marrying the brand with Yellowstone. Maybe just share with us a bit more about what happened, your partnership with them, and the success you experienced.
Yeah, a lot of that truly was just on advertising. A little bit of product placement, but primarily just advertising and getting that many eyeballs on the brand. And actually, that was a good learning, because as we fast forwarded, I think things became very much less of that full funnel marketing approach. And I think there was a time period where we suffered a little bit because we moved away from some of that full funnel approach. And that's something that we've worked very hard on, making sure not only our creative is what we want it to be and it needs to be, but then where we put that creative. And so we've gone back to doing a lot of full funnel marketing. But Paul and the team did incredibly well then, advertising and putting out some great content early on Yellowstone.
With that behind you, where are you focusing those marketing dollars? It seems like, again, that was fairly successful. The cost of customer acquisition is still very high. Where does Tecovas focus its marketing money? Are there collaboration, or tell us about what?
I think a full funnel approach. We've had a lot of success we had F1 here in Austin this past weekend. So we had I think the team is incredible at doing events, activations. We use our retail folks who are, again, very knowledgeable about, the personal side of the business as well as our products. But we're doing well in Major League Baseball. Even in the World Series coming up, we'll look to have an opportunity or two doing well with college football. So fishing where the fish are in a lot of ways, it's pretty simple. But I think getting the right content out there has been something that is, over the past year, I feel like has really been a major boost for us. And where it's very consistent and we're able to kind of do a lot of stuff in-house and then using those same assets in our social channels, on our website, on running a 30-second spot national commercial, but able to use a lot of those assets that are being generated by a creative content team that is really putting out some very solid programming. And then, of course, that helps the efficiency at the lower funnel as well. But we're having some success on efficiency. We know that, needless to say, you've got to be profitable in this day and time, and we are profitable, but we've got to keep making sure we're very efficient at using our marketing dollars.
As you're very much in your growth curve and talking about marketing, can you share roughly a percent of sales, roughly, that you would put towards marketing?
Yeah, we're running around 12 to 14%.
That's a very healthy number. When you think about mature brands, you're probably in that 3 to 4% range. But for growth brands, for sure, 10% plus is not uncommon.
Yeah, it is a healthy number. It's something that we watch carefully. But I do think we want to push the organization to be incredibly efficient and productive on the way we operate, getting leverage on our G&A. I think it's too easy to hit a marketing bucket, that variable expense. And we try and keep the marketing as much as we can variable so that we can push it up or down a little bit, as opposed to kind of, too many long-term contracts where you're getting that fixed cost up too much. So we're very careful about that as well. But we want to make sure it's a healthy budget, and we'll kind of dial that up and down as the case may be.
Sounds like with over 50 stores now, a lot of money in terms of marketing is going into stores. But let's talk about the growth of the company. Let's talk about where you are today, stores, online, and wholesale.
Yeah.
Then we'll talk a little bit about where do you go from here. So if you could just kind of give us a breakout of where Tecovas is today.
Sure. So our retail is probably roughly 60% of the business and online about 40%. We just started last year in the wholesale channel, and which goes a little bit back to the marketing dollars. I truly believe that physical distribution points are an important part of brand awareness. If you don't show up in certain stores that we know consumers are going to shop at their favorite location in any given city, then you're not on their radar. So I think wholesale offered a few things for us. Number one, it gives us a very authentic consumer that are shopping at very authentic independent stores that have sometimes these stores have been around for multi-generations. So it gets us an authentic consumer, which I think is very important to grow the roots of Western as we're trying to expand into more non-traditional Western markets. We kind of need to keep planting those roots so the tree doesn't fall over. It obviously gives us a revenue stream, but we want to make sure that these stores are part of our ecosystem. We're trying to drive traffic to their stores. We want to show up well in those stores. We want the stores to feel like we're a good partner to them. So we're building that up, but we're going to do it sort of small in a managed way. I mean, the beauty of kind of where we are and the scale that we've gotten to, we're still kind of plotting things out on a white sheet of paper. We have the luxury of not having to go tear out, retail stores that aren't working, or legacy IT systems that are just, we're still depreciating them, and yet they're not working for our needs right now. It's a great position to be in to just kind of be onboarding new AI tools and things like that, and making sure the team is able to bring those on board very effectively. So that's the kind of stuff we're focused on now, I would say. I think our strategy is pretty simple as far as the product pillars and the radical hospitality I mentioned. Now it's all about operational excellence and brand awareness. So those are the two things we're kind of focused on as we grow here.
As you look at wholesale, and I agree, I think it's a great way to continue to market the brand. Certainly a little less expensive than the CapEx required to build your own stores. Are you working with or looking for smaller partners, or are you working with a Nordstrom? I mean, where would I find your product if not Tecovas?
I can't remember the exact number now. We're probably at 40 accounts and maybe 150 doors on this independent Western area. Nordstrom has been we launched with Nordstrom earlier in the spring this year. We started with 12 doors, going incredibly well, very strong sell-through. The Nordstrom team is very excited. I was in a meeting with the buyers early on. And this gets to kind of, they had some Western silhouettes, et cetera, but I do think they had a lot of consumers coming to them saying, hey, do you have any more truly authentic, product? And I think that's kind of a niche that we're filling there. And it's interesting to see where they're having success as well. Places like South Coast Plaza in Orange County, California, even North Park in Dallas, where we have a store as well. Again, kind of a concept that we're seeing a rising tide. And we saw that at UGG quite a bit as well, that, a lot of times you'd have an UGG store that's doing very well, fairly near a Nordstrom store, and it would kind of lift both boats. So Nordstrom's been a great partner. Look forward to, kind of expanding that a little bit with them. We're going to be bringing on Dillard's as well. And again, we'll test with a few doors and make sure it's going well. What I like about on this radical hospitality, on how it shows up in different kind of channels, we've created what we call this trailblazing team. It's a group of maybe 10, 15 retail store managers or associate managers that we use to go on board and educate our wholesale partners about the brand. And there's nobody that knows our brand better than these retail trailblazers. And I think that those stores really enjoy kind of this retailer discussion, because they kind of understand all the stuff that they have to deal with in the four walls of their store, and can kind of really relate to these folks. So we found that, and sometimes we may run into a sizable wholesaler that's like, no, it's okay. We train our own people. And we kind of know, okay, that's probably not a good fit for us, because sorry, but you need to know our brand if you want it in your stores. And we're not asking for a lot. We're going to do more of the heavy lifting, but we need to have some interaction with the team that's going to be on the floor. So, we use some litmus tests on how quickly we need to grow this. And it's more about the quality of partnership and that's on us too. We want to be the best brand that they work with. So it's a two-way street.
Any shop and shop opportunities where you can actually take over, 800 square feet, 600 square feet of store and put your own person in there?
Yeah. So we're looking at that. I don't want to mention yet on that. And I think with a very exciting partner. So it's in the early stages, but I think we very much see eye to eye with this partner. So we're excited about it.
Is this, not to press you on it, but why not? I could press you. Is this how you get international?
It's unrelated, but we are, one of the things I think that always been key for me is priorities and focus. And I think that international is a big opportunity for us. We've got so much in our backyard right now that we need to focus on and make sure we excel at, that I just want to be a little bit careful about diluting things too much. Now, having said that, we have to be able to kind of put irons in the fire, knowing when we can expect a return on various investments that we're making. So we'll look to make sure that we've got enough irons in the fire. We can jump an S-curve if we need to in the future, but being careful about putting everything in at the same time when it gets a little bit chaotic for the teams. And that's one thing I've kind of learned in this position is I need to be careful about things that I even say, because all of a sudden a little whisper about something and all of a sudden the whole place is turning on.
Right. David likes this. David's looking at that. Oh, I hear you.
It was a question. It wasn't a directive.
I've seen the movie. I ask about international and agree. Listen, for a company your size, Lord knows you can easily double your store count, if not more than that. And more opportunities, as you discussed, to expand with wholesale and certainly online. But I think about one country. I think about Japan.
For sure.
And I just think, it's funny because I work with Dave Powers very closely, putting Gap product in Japan. And God, when they get on a trend, it is, you can't keep up with it.
Yeah, I agree completely. Was in Tokyo earlier this year, more for kind of a fun visit on my way to Asia and some of the manufacturing stuff. But with the purpose of kind of talking to a few people. And I don't think there's any question that would be an interesting market for us. I do think that, these can be very capital intensive. So I think when we are looking to launch it, we'll want to do it with partners in kind of an asset light approach. I've seen that movie before as well, as you mentioned, and can get pretty ugly pretty quickly on our path to more and more being more and more profitable. So, but we do think there's a lot of opportunity. I think Japan, South Korea, Australia is an interesting market, some European countries as well, Mexico, I think, Canada. So yeah, we think there's some interesting opportunities there.
How are you handling the pressure of tariffs?
Well, we are fortunate right now to have a lot of our production in Mexico, which is under the Fair Trade Agreement. And so we've been a little bit lucky there, I will say. Earlier this year, just because I think it's important to diversify a manufacturing base, you just can't have all of your production in one area or one factory. So we have diversified our base into Vietnam and India. I think it's hard to make a lot of decisions and cut and run on India because all of a sudden it's 50% tariff. So we'll kind of stay the course and do the best we can, and knowing that things will probably calm down or not, and we'll have to continue to adjust. But I think you just do the best we can. I think we try and control the things we can control and put ourselves in the best position to be agile enough to take advantage of certain things, and that's the best we can do, I think.
Any pricing increases that you've had to pass on, or have you absorbed any hits that you've taken?
We've absorbed for the most part. I think that we did a little bit of a price increase unrelated to tariffs, just because I think we're putting a lot into the product. And my view is I'd rather try and not extend and put prices to a point where it's problematic, but I'd rather put more into the product and see if people are willing to pay for it, as opposed to kind of value engineering product and cutting things, and all of a sudden your product quality is deteriorating. I think that's a slippery slope. And so we've tried to make sure that I want to be very strong on the value proposition curve. It doesn't mean we need to give away the product, but at the same time, I want people feeling like, wow, this product is so well done. I'm willing to pay the price that they're charging.
I'd say this, whoever's doing the graphics on your team is doing a great job. I thought the graphics, both on the hats and the t-shirts, were really strong. And I liked a lot of the product. Looks like there's still some opportunity on the women's side to catch up to where men's is, and a much tougher business than the men's piece. I mean, you get a couple of pearl snap shirts and some denim going with a few t-shirts and a trucker hat, like you're off to the races. Women are a little bit more fickle.
Yeah, you're right. And we're in apparel in general, we've tried to be a little bit careful on making sure we've got the right silhouettes and the right fit and I think I've seen too much where people think apparel is easy and you can just dive in and do it. And it's really not easy. And I think if you're going to get into it, you better do it in a very meaningful way. I think you're right on the men's side. That's why we think we can cover off men's basics by, again, focusing on doing it well. On the women, I think we're seeing that they're probably coming to us for a little bit more novelty, things that you can't necessarily get your basics at other places that they may be getting their basic t-shirts or jeans, things like that. So we're kind of learning a little bit more on the women's side, I would say, and being a little bit careful on, how much inventory we're buying, and then it becomes too seasonal. And now you're just, having to move markdowns and all of that, which we try and avoid.
So I've got one item for you that I think you need in stock.
Yeah.
You have the ability in your store to customize your Western belt buckle.
Yes.
I didn't see a lot of Western belt buckles I could just come in and buy.
Yeah, we agree with that. So we're looking at sort of the merch strategy there and making sure we've worked on the belts. I think the belts also got a little bit off course on too much filler, got a little stiff. And I think we've worked on getting that product back that's kind of meets the product pillars that we have.
Yeah, because I agree, David. I thought that the belts didn't hold up to the promise of the boot at a high level.
Agree. Yeah. So working on that. And then I do also believe the hardware is a big opportunity, not only on the customized size, but giving, off the shelf some quality hardware that I think people love to match back to their boots. And so it's a huge accessory for us. Could be a lot bigger.
You mentioned technology earlier, AI specifically.
Yeah.
What are you looking at, or what are the opportunities within Tecovas right now around technology that you feel are important? Again, move the brand forward.
Yeah, I think we're pretty excited about what we're seeing out there. And we've got a young population here at Tecovas, so very savvy with, using AI just personally on managing their emails, managing their calendars. How can they avoid jumping into Excel as the default and instead using these tools to really kind of drive productivity just on their daily routines. As a company, for example, we just brought on a group, Invent AI, on our allocation tool to our stores. And, we can feed it internal things on knowing when marketing campaigns are hitting or promotional things or events that we're hosting. We can also plug it with external things like concert tours, weather. And it's not only it's recommending and giving you like a probability of what's going to sell in any given store. And the team's done a fantastic job of implementing that tool. We wanted to do that first, and then we'll move on to the planning tool and actually doing a lot of forecasting for us. It's learning a lot. So I think we're leaning into those types of tools. Obviously on the website, a lot of the CX and having AI tools that can quickly answer people's questions and identifying patterns. And so that's been a fun thing to watch, and people training it, and it's just getting better and better. Our inbound contacts, from phone and email, and now people can just get their answers quickly. Now, if they want to call, again, that's part of Radical Hospitality, be available. And if they want to chat, styling questions, things like that, terrific. But if it's basic questions they just want to answer, let's get them easy answers to that stuff so we don't frustrate the consumer. So those are kind of some of the ways in which we're looking at AI, among many others.
One question for you about taking on a business from a founder, Paul Hedrick. Just walk us through high level, some of the challenges or opportunities around taking on a business from a founder, because it just can't be that easy.
Yeah. The good news is when I was practicing corporate law for 25 years, a lot of my practice was founders taking companies through rounds of venture capital financing and then sell-side M&A work or taking them public. So I dealt with a lot of founders in my background. The good news about Paul, and I gut checked this quite a bit coming in, making sure he felt it was the right move for him to give up the reins on being CEO. And so we had a lot of discussions on me coming in just to make sure that's really what he wanted, as opposed to, are there other things you could do, whether it's a chief human resource officer or somebody that might be able to take the stuff that you're not enjoying off your plate and you can continue to focus on certain things. Long story short, I think a couple things. One, I took my time with it a little bit to make sure I brought him along and he was comfortable with my management style, the things that I felt we needed to be doing. But even as early as 30 days to 45 days within starting, we did a reduction in force of about 15% of the personnel, mainly because I felt like we needed to reallocate capital in certain areas that were underbuilt and certain other areas that were overbuilt. And that's just, I give that example because Paul while I would talk him through all of that, I don't think there's been one time in 3 years that he's just kind of put his foot down and said, no, I disagree with that. Let's not do something like that. So he's been a terrific partner as well. And I think, like a lot of things, anytime somebody's starting new at a new organization or moving up in a role within their current organization, you may have a lot of great ideas and a playbook, but if you don't kind of bring people along and you try to make too many changes too quickly, it doesn't go well a lot of times. And that doesn't mean you don't have to have a sense of urgency on things that need to get done. But boy, if you don't bring people along, it's going to be a challenge. And I feel the same way about the founder. If they don't understand what you're doing, then it's going to be hard for them to get comfortable. But anyway, I think to me, that's the biggest thing and now I feel like I've kind of hit my stride. And again, I continue to bring Paul along and want his ideas about things. He's a great visionary on brand guardrails. And And while he understands what got us here won't get us there necessarily, but what are the things that we can kind of push the envelope on? And then what are the things that we just can't compromise on? And so he's a great filter for me on those types of things as well. So it's been a very good partnership.
It sounds like it, and it's always impressive when a founder knows it's time to step aside, to bring someone else on board to fulfill a vision that maybe they can't get to, or they've just taken the brand as far as they can. So, hats off to Paul.
Yeah, and I think Paul, frankly, I think it's just, he could do it. I think wasn't enjoying certain parts of the business. And, one of the activists that we used to have at Deckers always used to say, from his dad even, that managing a business isn't rocket science, but managing people is. And I think there's some truth to that. I kind of enjoy that part of it. It's a fun part to kind of, help people wade through, dealing with as organizations get larger, that by nature they become a little bit more political, and, it's something we're striving to culturally make sure that we are not that way, but it's just, you got to work at it every day.
Let's conclude with rapid fire. All right, David, favorite pair of boots?
I like the Dean as a style. It's a zip boot. It's easy to travel with. I've been on the road quite a bit. And if you get sort of tapped on the shoulder, even if you're pre-check, it's an easy one to get on and off.
Who would you most like to have collaborate with the Tecovas?
Well, that's a tough one. I'm on collaborations. I think I'm a big fan of quality over quantity. And I hate to throw out names right now. We've done some in the past. We just did a fantastic one with Mossy Oak that was really well done by their team, by our team. And I like the idea of not just doing one and done. So we're going to do some more things with Mossy Oak. And it brings us a very authentic outdoor consumer that we believe is in our wheelhouse as well. So I love that one. The Chili's one, that for us was a little bit about brand awareness. I think Chili's is a remarkable company. They're doing an incredible job on the casual dining sector. So that was fun to do. That's not something we would want to do every year. That's more of this kind of awareness type play. So I think these collaborations serve different purposes, and we just need to be very clear what success looks like when we do a collaboration. And as we've talked to people before, needless to say, it needs to be a win-win. What do we bring to the table for a Mossy Oak or another partner? And what do they bring to the table for us?
Favorite streamed show other than Yellowstone?
Actually, Chad Powers, I've actually been enjoying, which I think is pretty funny, with Glenn Powell. So I've been watching that.
Last question. If you could have a conversation with anyone, dead or alive, who would it be?
I think Lincoln might be interesting right now to kind of pick his brain about what he would see going on right now, and be kind of curious to have someone like that see where we are now and get his thoughts on state of affairs.
And with that, we'll land this flight of the Retail Pilot. David, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you, Ken. It was fun. Really enjoyed being with you.
Thanks for tuning in to this week's flight of the Retail Pilot. And please give us a review on your favorite podcast platform.